that. That's the closest Dan Mullen is going to be getting to an SEC title game in a long time.
Oof, and Connor with the heater, and I'm Rutledge, and that's Connor, and we're Friend Stream Sports. We're up, we're here, we're live. Connor, it feels good to be out and about this evening as we're getting ready to jump into championship weekend, but since you're traveling to Ohio tomorrow, we're going to play a little bit of an Ohio football event here as we
Oh, I
start
like that.
our show.
Mount Union versus Baldwin Wallace. I like it. Let's do it.
That would be... Actually, a really good friend of mine went to Baldwin Wallace.
Yeah. College of Wooster versus Muhlenberg.
What about... I mean, nothing says the state of Ohio like that Tuesday night Toledo versus University of Ohio Bobcats college football game that we just don't get enough of on television. Yeah.
Tuesday night in action.
Tuesday night action. Clear your schedules. The MAC is on.
I mean, that has probably helped recruiting a little bit. There's probably been at least one person that, was from that area that watched a Western Michigan versus Miami of Ohio Red Hawk football game, and
there you go.
Wanted to be a Red Hawk.
I realize as we've started this game, we have played so many games as Cleveland that I look at this stadium and I just feel very comfortably familiar. I think I've been
home field advantage. You need everything you get against me. Isn't that right, Rutledge?
I think I've been Cleveland on this show more times than I've been Seattle. Speaking of Seattle, let's start our show tonight with our NFL discussion. Normally we say that for later in the show, but Connor, there's a hot and not conversation, and I can't address it without saying how much I stayed up past my bedtime last night to watch the Seahawks drive back and then Russell Wilson toss a horrible interception for the 2-point conversion, which would have taken a tie and go to overtime and even a later bedtime, to now sort of falling apart. I know I'm a Seahawks fan, but it seems like in the teams that are hot or cold entering this December, they're one of the ones leading the way. How do you feel about what we've seen out of Seattle this year?
Yeah, it's been a tough year for the Seahawks for sure. 3-8. Not only that, but is it Pete Carroll left the press conference midway through last week? It's you feel like they have maybe taken care of some issues, but they haven't. You feel like DK Metcalf could help them in the passing game, but he isn't. You feel like the defense is going to be good because they were good 5 years ago, but they aren't. So being able to, I think sometimes in the NFL, it's just really important to sort of look yourself in the mirror and say, all right, this isn't working anymore. It's time to blow it up. You wish that there would have been more time for the Seahawks to be good. That was one of the examples of a short-lived dynasty that never was. But, it's definitely the Seahawks are in trouble. And I think a rather cold take would be that they're probably not going to make the playoffs here.
Definitely not going to make the playoffs, but are you saying that this might be the last season of Seattle and Pete Carroll?
I think that it very well should be. I think that, after a while, guys lose the locker room, right? The Bill Belichick type coaches are they are the exception to the rule. They're the exception that proves the rules. So, yeah, I could see that this could kind of be the swan song for Pete Carroll, and it might be a good idea to get a fresh voice there.
I mean, there was, even if we liken him to someone that had a similar dynasty in the NFC, speaking objectively, Andy Reid took his time where he was in Philadelphia when Andy Reid and squad were cooking. That was a great team, but when it got near the end, he lost the locker room too. And now look, him in Kansas City, they're a team that I would say is still showing life in everything they're doing. So besides Seattle, that's my take of who's really cold going into December. Who's a cold team for you, Connor, that you've been sort of watching this year and you've been surprised about?
I think a team that is cooling off for sure is the Dallas Cowboys. They've been struggling. They've lost a few here over the last couple weeks, and their defense which started out pretty hot. I mean, they did give up a whole mess of points to those Las Vegas Raiders, and quite honestly, the Raiders don't exactly have the world's greatest offense. So it's I think that the Dallas Cowboys need to be very, very careful, or they could be in a position where they got to fight really hard to win the division.
Definitely a solid take on the Cowboys. We did some time to say that, hey, the Cowboys were looking great. They were doing good. But I will say last night watching, you have them 7-5, Washington's 5-6. Washington still has a team that if they do some things right, they could make some things happen. They really looked like a football team that Ron Rivera's, maybe it's not, this year they're making a run, but they really were starting to figure some things out last night.
Oh yeah, no, the Washington football team, they're playing hard. Coach Rivera has them going, and lucky for them, they aren't exactly in the world's toughest division. So being able to come in and compete and be competitive till the end, that's all you're asking for in the NFL.
So who in your NFL is your hot team? I think we might have the same one. But who is your NFL hot team entering December that you want to sort of watch?
I think that you need to talk about kicking the ball out of bounds. I think that you also need to talk about the Green Bay Packers. They're playing really, really good football right now, and that's with an Aaron Rodgers that we don't quite know what he's up to. Just to kind of put it bluntly, we don't quite know what Aaron Rodgers is up to. If he's got COVID toe or a broken toe, but they still keep winning. They still keep rolling, folks. So I think the Packers are a really good hot team to be thinking about.
Yeah, I think at this point, if you think about the drama that the Packers were entering this season to being a team that Rodgers was going to leave, and then all of a sudden all the mid-season stuff that happened, and they've gotten all this really weird attention, but they're leading their division. They seem unstoppable. We've even seen some people wanting Matt LaFleur Coach of the Year. They're 9-3. Like they seem to just be doing nothing wrong. So we'll see how they go in the playoffs. My hot team entering December, which we talk about them all the time, or at least as a sports community we talk about. Oh, that was a solid one. As a sports community, we talk about them all the time, but the New England Patriots are super hot coming into this December football season.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, the Patriots are they're a team that does not beat themselves, and they're a team that is taking care of every game that's right in front of them, and that's something that you cannot rate highly enough.
I have been we're both big believers, as that football went nowhere. We're both big believers that it all comes down to coaching, and it's just shown that Bill Belichick and staff and company have just, we talked this a little bit last week. They have just really coached up that team to be doing all the right things, and it's amazing what happens when you get someone who buys into a message about how well they'll do. I'm not surprised that wasn't an interception. That was a horrible pass on my part.
I almost took that one back to the house.
That almost went all the way. I give you the ball right back. In better field position than you gave it to me.
It's kind of like a punt. You kind of punted it to me. So I appreciate that.
Baker Mayfield is just doing his best. And Joe Burrow got kind of a run
the
there.
New England Patriots, they've been playing well. They've been putting a lot of good games together, and I think that it's really not only that, they do have a few winnable games left. I think they do have the Bills twice, which is huge, and the Colts. But outside of that, they're playing the Jags, and then at the Dolphins in their usual sort of end of the season game against the Dolphins. So Patriots are a team to definitely be keeping an eye on. And they are pretty. They're looking pretty good right now.
They're definitely looking pretty good altogether. I think there's not much that's going to stop them from having great leverage of going into the playoffs maybe getting that first round bye week, getting a little bit of time off, getting a little bit of rest at home, but we'll see. This playoffs definitely seems like it's going to be, feels like it's going to feel a little wide open as we get into it. I'm excited.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially just as about excited as Joe Burrow not completing any passes here in this first quarter. A little bit different than last week's first quarter here at Friend Stream Sports. Pitching the shutout so far.
Last week's first quarter when I couldn't wrap up Reynolds at all.
That was he played well for me. I appreciate the old Reynolds rap.
That was some good time. Speaking of some good time, there's a couple new coaches that are going to have a good time in their new positions. And then one of them I have a little bit of a hot take to take off of Connor. We're going to go a little bold, and we're going to go a little Uncle Colin here with how we're going to approach this one. So Lincoln Riley took off, and he left, and he decided that he was done with being in Oklahoma, and he was going to go to USC. This is where I can openly say that I believe USC, and this is going to get some counter arguments here from you, Connor, but I think USC has a potential job, as we talked like potential soccer jobs last week. USC as a college football job, in my opinion, that's a top 5 job. No matter how good or bad what you're inheriting is, that's a top 5 job to take every single year. I mean, some of your alumni and some of your supporters are going to be, you know, Will Ferrell, Matt Leinart, and Steven Spielberg when he was first making Star Wars was wearing a USC jacket. So it's just the program that you truly get a lot of buy-in and a lot of following from, and you have endless resources. I also think nowadays with the college football playoff section, you have the variety of a good possibility of a schedule to do something with. Lincoln Riley, hot take here, was staring at an SEC schedule coming up, and I'm not saying that he didn't want the challenge, but when you have to recruit to play and adjust from on your schedule having Kansas and Kansas State and a Texas team that's been inconsistent to now you have to add in and take on a Bama followed by LSU followed by an inconsistent Auburn week in and week out, and hopefully you have some relief as you get ready to play Texas. That's a huge jump that you have to undertake as a coach. I think that his leap was done to obviously protect his ability, himself. I'm sure, Connor, you know it better than I do his ties to USC, but Oklahoma has plenty of resources to be a good program, but I really think he just stared down the barrel of the SEC West coming right for him and said, no thanks, and headed in that opposite direction. So that's my hot take on Lincoln Riley taking over.
Yeah, we, as it relates to Lincoln Riley, first off, I did get a notification from The Athletic that Oklahoma's already had a 5-star quarterback decommit and then recommit to SC. So, that's already begun. I think a few things. Number one, very important to remember that Lincoln Riley in Oklahoma did such a great job at a place that had traditionally not put out great quarterbacks. So being able to have that ability to be in the quarterback cradle of Southern California is very, very important for Lincoln Riley, and I think it definitely – there you go. Good pick. I am all over the place this evening. But being able to have that element of coaching there within the Pac-12, I think, is something that Lincoln Riley is going to do a really good job at. He already had Oklahoma as a national program, so he didn't, so it's not like, even though he probably has more ties in the Big 12 country and has more of those pieces, it's not like he was just recruiting Oklahoma and Texas. And at SC, he can still go to Oklahoma and Texas. And, I think the other piece to consider is that Lincoln Riley, he would rather go play Oregon than Alabama. He would probably rather be the number one coach in the conference than maybe the number 3, maybe the number 4 coach. So I don't blame him for this move for sure. The other thing, let's consider this is the NIL element of this. I know that folks can find anybody anywhere, but the proximity to Silicon Valley, the proximity to Southern California, the proximity to those boosters, honestly really help attract the top recruits as opposed to, Jimmy Joe's Chevy dealership in Norman, Oklahoma, I think is something to consider as well.
I mean, those fine people at Jimmy Joe's Chevy dealership will get you a great deal and put you in a fantastic Chevrolet for an interest rate you'd be surprised on, though.
So yeah, no, it's I think Lincoln Riley's making a good move. I think he's going to come in and win right away at SC, and he's going to really turn that around. And he'll be at SC for a little bit. Then here's a hot take for you. That's probably his next step into the NFL.
That's a super hot take. So let me counter that. How many years do you give him at SC before he goes into the NFL?
I think he's probably got an axe to grind and not number of years, but what could he accomplish? I think that if he wins a national title, you could very, very easily see him making that move very quickly.
Okay. So I know I went off a lot about Lincoln Riley, and Connor, I agree with a lot of your takes on him as well. He made a very strategical career move to continue to. But speaking of someone that has grown, but in my opinion never or seemed weird in the brand, Brian Kelly is going to go to Baton Rouge. Now, we knew that Coach Orgeron was going to be gone. We knew that they were looking for a new coach. But to me, it was a very big surprise to see Brian Kelly take off and go to Louisiana State. Now, LSU's got great resources, and they're becoming a big program. But, Connor, how do you feel about that announcement of Brian Kelly leaving Notre Dame and heading down south into the land of the Bayou?
I got a text from my brother-in-law shortly after that announcement came out, and he just said, Connor, I don't exactly follow college football as much as you do, but has there ever been this much of a seismic shift in the coaching landscape in college football? I don't know if there has. I mean, to be honest, right? It's Oklahoma, from Oklahoma to SC, you have another coach leaving, and in some ways, I think that you can make the case that Lincoln Riley is leaving for greener pastures. I think it makes sense to share that. Brian Kelly's probably leaving for greener pastures. Great sack, another sack by the Browns.
They're just barking at you over there in Cleveland.
Good old dog pound. So being able to I think that Brian Kelly is going to want the opportunity to really show off how good of a coach he is. I think he's been having to recruit with two hands tied behind his back, and I think that he's probably tired of that.
Is Notre Dame, and refresh my memory here, but is Notre Dame a tough school to recruit academically? Like they have a high standard that you have to get players into, don't they?
Oh yeah, no, it's a Stanford type school in that you pretty much always have you pretty much are always recruiting with a disadvantage because you have to make sure that folks can qualify academically as students to Notre Dame, which is something LSU doesn't have.
No,
they will just work towards NCAA standards. So they're kind of like Stanford in that regard.
Okay, yeah, I think you're right at that. I think something else that'll help them is that the belonging, and I'm a big believer that Notre Dame should be in. I don't think I've ever shared this on this show, but I'm a big believer that Notre Dame actually should be in the Big Ten. And I think being independent, while historically is something they've done, really harms them because time in and time out, and I think we had this debate at least once, if not in person, but on this show, their schedule doesn't do them any favors. And while they have some great old historic games, I remember in 2012 when they were making their first national championship run, listening to, once again, Colin Cowherd really argue their tough game they had against Pitt, and that wasn't showing that they were anything really to reckon with. And then, of course, they played Alabama in the championship game and got absolutely hosed. So I think for him, Brian Kelly is probably a little bit relieved that now he has, I think he'll meet to the challenge with the facilities and all the money that's recently been dumped into LSU to be able to take on Bama, stand up against things like Texas and Oklahoma on the schedule, whatever Jimbo Fisher cooks up at Texas A&M in his next couple of years. I think there's a lot of good things that can happen for him. I'm interested to watch him meet the challenge more than I am to watch these picks that I'm throwing to you are just going to the wrong orange helmets. We're just playing pitch and catch to whoever we want to tonight, Connor.
Yeah, we're doing a great job of throwing it to players in orange helmets here this evening.
I forgot even what I was saying. I think I wanted to say that at least I think Brian Kelly will meet the challenge, and I like to see that he's taken this one head on. By the way, haven't said hello yet, but Steven the Steady, once again, he's here. He's dropped some great things in the comments. If you're out there, he thinks that Lincoln Riley's not going to make it, but Brian Kelly's move to LSU is actually very good for him. So, hello, Steven. All right. That brings us to pause for our halftime hot takes. But speaking of pause, there's a good pause for the cause here that we like on Friendstream Sports. What's that, Connor?
At Friendstream Sports, we are a big supporter of Daddle's Coffee because Daddle's Coffee is a big supporter of us. Daddle's Coffee hand roasts their coffee in Winter Park, Florida, and their proceeds go towards the health research of the King Charles Spaniel as they fight against different diseases such as hip dysplasia. Rutledge, how can our listeners get Daddle's Coffee?
You definitely have to go and head to daddlesonline.com. And when you go to daddlesonline.com at your checkout, use promo code FSS. That will get you 15% off your next purchase. And to me, it's just one of my favorite cups of coffee. If I didn't have to go to bed after this show, I'd be all in there getting me some Daddle's Coffee right now. But they do a great cause for the great pause, and they sponsor our favorite segment, Halftime Hot Take. So tonight's Halftime Hot Take, Connor, is gonna wrap up our conversation that we just had. Who do you think is going to make a bigger impact at their new school? Brian Kelly or Lincoln Riley?
Oh, I think Lincoln Riley is going to come in and just from a win-loss and recruiting and sort of juice perspective, I think Lincoln Riley is going to do that. LSU as a program is already in pretty good shape. They might not be as consistent as they want to be, but 8-9 wins is very expected at LSU. 8-9 wins could be and should be expected usually at SC, but they've been getting 4 and 5. So even if the first year is we get an 8 and 4 out of SC or a 9 and 3 even out of SC. That is leaps and bounds better. I would say Lincoln Riley just because he's got more work to do and a higher ceiling to catch.
I'm definitely also going to go with Lincoln Riley, but I'm going to say Lincoln Riley will do more of an impact sooner than you will see Brian Kelly in the long term, and that's just because LSU is more of a grind. SC can accelerate to being a better program sooner, quicker, based on the rest of their conference. So we're going to resume this game as you have. Connor has a 22% completion rate, and I have a 49% completion rate. This is definitely where people come out and they enjoy our show more than they enjoy our football. Steven also says that he believes Billy Napier at Florida is going to do bigger things than Lincoln Riley or Brian Kelly. That's a hot take there.
Yeah, let's not forget Coach Napier. That is for sure.
It's just always good to see the changing. Were you running the option with Joe Burrow?
Hey, gotta keep it going. Gotta keep you guessing what I'm doing here. Gotta stay unpredictable.
I'm waiting. That smells like a screen pass coming. That's what that smells like.
Oh, a little screen pass action, huh?
Little screensy. All right. As we
There we go.
continue. Oh,
Finally, we got Jamar Chase on the board here. I think that's his first reception of the game, which, that's a problem if that's Jamar Chase's first reception.
that's definitely a problem. So speaking of problems, there is lots of problems heading into championship weekend for some teams, but I want to discuss the new college football playoff rankings that dropped. We will go through the top 6. That was a fed back 6, but we will go through the top 6 and then kind of discuss how that feels in the landscape of college football. Number 1 is Georgia. Number 2 is Michigan. Number 3 is Alabama. Number 4 is Cincinnati. And number 5 is Oklahoma State, followed by number 6, Notre Dame. So, of course, there's a coach leaving their possible playoff contending team with Brian Kelly taking off eventually. But the big game this weekend, Connor, is going to be Bama, Georgia, as we get ready for Championship Week Showdown. But thinking of that top 6, we talked this last week, how do you feel like this all fares out for Cincinnati making the playoff?
Yeah, there's a lot of folks as it relates to Cincinnati that will never give them the credit that's due. I don't know if Cincinnati, they've had a lot of very unimpressive games. I don't know if that's something to really put them in the playoff, but I've always had the thought process of give a group of 5 one shot. Give them one shot. It's a team that has done a great job over multiple seasons, and let them get boat raced. I think Cincinnati would get absolutely boat raced by Georgia. So let them get boat raced, and that kind of squelches those arguments that you might hear to add those group of 5 teams.
They will definitely, if they face off against Georgia in the playoff were to start today, they are going to be the martyr for the group of 5, because there is no way that, no matter how good you are, that Cincinnati has the bodies that can take on against the huge strength of just Jordan Davis alone at the University of Georgia.
You would need multiple offensive lines block Jordan Davis, not just multiple players, multiple full offensive lines.
And that would be having the offensive linemen on top of each other's shoulder pads. Mm-hmm. So Cincinnati right now, as they get ready to play Houston this weekend, is definitely at a, sitting where they are sitting at number 4. I think for them it is a win and you're in situation. Just win your game, you'll go to the playoff. I don't think anyone should bump them, unless for some reason Oklahoma State beats Baylor like 62-3. But I don't think Cincinnati's in a position to where they will lose control of their own destiny. But I'm with you, Connor, to watch them come in as a 4 spot and matchup, which most likely is going to be Georgia. That's just
rude.
It's you say anyone can beat anyone any given Sunday, but everyone will liken it. I feel like the talking heads of the world will liken it to when Boise State took on Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl, but we will all come back and compare it to when Georgia played Hawaii in the Sugar Bowl. Do you remember that game?
Oh, yeah. Georgia, Hawaii, about Alabama, Utah.
Yeah. Well, didn't Utah won that on the upset, though, didn't they?
Utah did indeed win. It can happen, but I don't know if Georgia's going to be upset by too many folks. They are really good.
They are super good.
So you kind of think that the bigger game is the SEC championship game as opposed to the Big 12 title game?
I definitely think the bigger game is the SEC championship game for sure. I don't see how, of course, I'm not discrediting Nick Saban at all. Fantastic coach, does really well. They were able to pull out that overtime victory and not be upset by Auburn, which, while some are saying, I can't believe they played Auburn so close, they should have done better. I think that's more of a testament of a team to grind it out. It's one thing to dominate, dominating is impressive, But to grind it out and come back to where you know your back's against the wall, I think that shows a lot of adversity, which that proves you more as a team. But I don't know if they have just the athletes in the locker room to take on whatever it is that Kirby Smart put together. Because to watch Georgia at first, I was skeptical. And I don't know about you, Connor. That team's just impressive of just how great their defensive abilities are and how they can just, no one can seem to touch them.
Oh, absolutely. I think, unfortunately for Georgia, their win against Clemson was less and less impressive as the year wore on. But they've put together plenty of other really quality wins in that time frame. So, I kind of think that the biggest game to watch the most is going to be the Big 12 title game. So I will disagree with you a little bit there. I think a lot of it is pretty cut and dry on the SEC side of things. I think obviously if Georgia wins, they're in. And I would say further, I would say Alabama is out. If Alabama wins, you probably have two SEC teams in, right? I think that's sort of the idea there. But the understanding the way in which Oklahoma State could beat Baylor, if it's close, a one-loss Oklahoma State team could still be out of the playoffs. If Oklahoma State blows them out, does that necessarily mean that they should be in the playoffs? I don't know.
I agree that there's a lot to watch that one there with the Big 12 championship game. So, what is too close of a score for Oklahoma State to not make it?
Say that one more time.
With the Big 12 championship game, you call it close. What is too close of a score between Oklahoma State and Baylor for Oklahoma State? This is assuming Bama loses, right? Bama loses, I'm going to say, by 2 touchdowns. What is too close of a game for Oklahoma State and Baylor for Oklahoma State to not make their way in?
Yeah, I think first off, if Alabama loses by 1 point, they're not in. I have a really, unless you only can put a 2-loss team in the playoffs, I have a hard time putting any 2-loss teams in the playoffs. I could see, I think that if it's, I did not mean to run that out. But I didn't do too bad with it. Good job, brother.
That's a pretty good one.
I would think that just a slow Oklahoma State game where it just didn't really feel like they deserve it, right? It's squeaking it out by one point or a field goal, and hitting you with a nice little screen game there. Yeah, if Oklahoma State plays sloppy, I actually wouldn't. I would see that might not be enough to get them in. But if they come out, play a complete game, I am unsure what the spread is, but cover the spread against Baylor, I could definitely see them. Not making the playoffs. Or pardon me, Oklahoma State comes in and takes care of business against Baylor. They do. If it's just sort of sloppy, they don't.
Spread for that game is 5.5 points. So I definitely think...
So Oklahoma State wins by a touchdown, and, their quarterback doesn't throw, like 9 interceptions like we've thrown today. I think that there is a case for Oklahoma State to jump for this exercise, a 2-loss Alabama team.
I think that could be big. So that would make your rankings what? Number 1 would be Georgia, number 2 be Michigan, number 3 Cincinnati, and then number 4 Oklahoma State.
That's the other piece we got to remember too. Who's to say that Michigan loses?
They're what is happening? My defense is falling apart here.
Finally getting it going, baby.
Connor's turning it on as we get the fourth quarter drama once again. This is where Friend Stream Sports becomes less about the sports and more about the friends, as it just turns into a game of Madden and always in the fourth quarter. You got to think that Michigan, Iowa, while it's not seen on paper as a tough out, they're not That's not an easy game. Iowa's never been a slouch opponent. I mean, they're 10-2. You know, they both have basically allowed the same allowed total yards for defensively on average of a game. So unless Michigan really gets the pass game going and starts tearing apart Iowa, there's a chance that Iowa could slow and steady grind against it if Michigan comes out flat, which Jim Harbaugh Michigan teams have sometimes been known to just come out flat and seem like they don't know what they're doing. I don't know what.
Don't sleep on Iowa.
Yeah, you never. I remember the first time I got a good hefty dose of "Don't sleep on Iowa." Speaking of "Don't sleep," that lineman just totally slept on blocking that tackle, and I got leapt
That's what we
on.
call the lookout block.
What, he was looking out at the stands?
Once the D lineman runs past the offensive lineman, you yell, "Look out!"
Have you yelled "look out" in your football career?
No, because I was either in front of guys or I was holding them.
Oh, okay. If you can't beat them, hold them.
If you can't beat them, hold them.
I like that. But Iowa, so the first time I ever had an experience of Iowa, I think I was playing NCAA 2004 with some friends, and my friend picked Iowa. And I didn't at the time. I was still from Canada, didn't know a ton about college football yet, just falling in love with the sport. It was my first experience playing against Iowa. It is probably one of the most mind-blowing college football video game losses I've ever had in my entire life. I think I was like number 2 Miami versus this Iowa team that nothing was ranked high at all, and just somehow I got absolutely manhandled because you just don't sleep on Iowa.
It's
So
like the Italians in the European, in the European Championships. Don't sleep on Italy. Don't sleep on.
that's a Connor don't sleep thing. When Connor could maybe sleep through the game, he's not going to sleep through the team.
Wow, great job there with that nice conversion.
Look at that. Minute 35. I mean, I'm down by 3, but I've got Baker Mayfield, who's known to do all types of spazzy clutch work.
You should. Oh, nice. You should have done the revert. You could have done the reverse drive, right? As it was the Broncos that drove 98 yards against the Browns all those years ago. Now the Browns could be putting together a game-winning drive of their own. And a game that is roughly as large as an AFC playoff game. Friends Stream Sports.
Friends Stream Sports, live streaming, Tuesday 8 o'clock on Twitch. I mean, this is a Friends playoff game. Every week feels like the champion to me. It's bragging rights for the sign-off. All right, let's make this one work.
There we go.
And boom goes the dynamite.
I think now you and I have the same amount of interceptions.
I think so.
Great job.
I like how your player celebration is head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
Got to. So, those are some of my thoughts on championship week. I think that there is a lot of potential for some good, some really good games to be had, and just being able to come out and hopefully we have some close ones.
You know what I'm kind of excited about? And I'm not going to say I'm going to grip and watch it like I'm holding a bowl of snacks and I'm going to watch it, but I'm going to pay attention to is this ACC championship game of Pitt versus Wake Forest. I think that's been such a sleeper of these two teams that were usually kind of, gimme losses for the Florida States or the Clemsons of the ACC in the past years, and now these two programs have risen to the top. I'm just sitting here cheering for the little guy that, someone's going to get their just dues and put themselves a championship banner in their stadium when these are normally not two names that you're used to seeing. Like, I can read down the rest of the schedule. Oregon, Utah, Baylor, Oklahoma State, You've got in the Sun Belt, App State, Louisiana, Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, Iowa, all names you're used to seeing, but to see Pittsburgh taking on Wake Forest, I'm excited for that to happen. Good for
Oh
them.
yeah, and you got two good quarterbacks, two good programs, and teams that aren't usually under the spotlight. But speaking of spotlights, my light seemed to have shone brightest here this evening.
Yes, definitely as the light dimmed in the stadium, you took off and quieted down the dog pound. So, who are you taking in that Pitt Wake Forest game, Connor? No
Who
reason.
am, uh, who am I taking in Pitt Wake Forest? I think Pitt's got the better quarterback, so I'm going to go with Pitt.
I'm going to go Wake Forest because they've been a little bit more dominant through the year, and I want to see them close it out.
Nice. Any other picks we need to make?
Is this one we're going to go Big Ten championship game? Uh, are you sleeping on Iowa or are you taking them?
I think Michigan is going to. I think Michigan's going to not look spectacular, but they're going to pull it out at the end. I think Harbaugh's got it going on, and I expect Michigan to leave Indiana with that Big Ten title and their ticket punch to the playoffs.
I'm going to pick Iowa just to see the upset happen.
Ooh.
So I'm going to put it out there for Iowa, and we'll see what happens. And then for our one NFL game for the week coming up, we have. I got to get us a good one. All right, here we go. Actually, this is a good one. We're going to pick two. So first one is at 4:05 on Sunday. This is the Washington football team versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Who are you taking in this one? Las Vegas is only favored by 2.5.
I got to go with the Raiders. They had a large emotional win this past week, and I think that they're going to be able to exercise some of their late season woes and really rally together for a nice win.
I'm going to give that also to the Raiders, but I think it's going to be a very close game. I don't think that it's going to be like a 1-point victory for the Raiders. They are not going to cover the spread. Then the other game to watch is this Monday night, on Monday, December 6th. The Patriots take on the Bills in Buffalo, which is a pretty big conference matchup. I'm going to take the New England Patriots are really going to start to show that they are shining bright this year with Mac Jones as he's getting his diet of lobster rolls in. Who are you taking in this one?
I see Buffalo winning. I see Buffalo figuring it out. I see Buffalo winning. I see Josh. I see Josh Allen making one too many plays against that staunch, stingy Belichick defense.
Well, that's all of our show. Steven took Wake Forest in the ACC championship game. Connor, do you have anything to say before we sign off for the evening?
Uh, you know, uh, be keeping me in your thoughts and prayers as I have to battle the Great White North over the next few days.
Connor's going to be taking it out there on the road, and to which I say, whenever you're in the sun, whenever you're in the snow, wear sunscreen because the snow reflects, and you could sunburn even in the cold weather.
That's wise words.
Well, for that, that's the rest of our show for this evening. So I'm Rutledge.
And I'm Connor.
Have a great night.